welcome to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and we're delighted to have with us three of our favorite authors, Kate Carlisle, Paige Shelton, and Jenn McKinlay. We're here to celebrate Jenn's new book, but we're also going to talk to Kate and Paige about their recent cozy mysteries. Before I forget, we do have signed copies of the authors' books available here at the Poison Pen Bookstore, and we would love to have you order a copy, either online or by giving us a call, and I know the authors would appreciate the sales as well. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jenn McKinlay, Paige Shelton, and Kate Carlisle. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, John.
Here, buddy.
Okay, I'm going to start you off, and why don't we start with Jenn first, since it's her special day. Tell us a little bit about yourselves before you became best-selling authors, and I will give you bonus points if you include an embarrassing childhood incident.
Hot. Seat got hot. A little bit about myself. Okay, I grew up in the mountains in Connecticut. My mom was a librarian, and I am the youngest of 6. And the way I used to make money when I was a kid, because I was a candy freak back then, was so bad. I used to write a family newspaper because I found my mom's old portable, with this, like a red case. It was really cool, and you unzip it. So I found her typewriter when I was like 6 or 7, and I started writing a newspaper, but I ratted out every rotten thing my siblings did. Not bad. So not really embarrassing, but kind of bad. Then it was all for candy. I charged her 25 cents a newspaper, and it was like a whole crime sheet. Who came in late, who used bad words. It was awesome. Best job I ever had.
Paige?
My turn?
Yep.
Okay, well, I grew up in the Midwest, moved to Salt Lake City right after college, and that's the first embarrassing story that came to my mind. I'm sure there are many, but when I first moved there, I was a little uncomfortable with everything, and myself, and I'm walking through this mall next to where I was working. I was working in an advertising agency, and I went to this mall for lunch, and I was in a business suit, but back in the day it was a skirt suit, and, a blazer, and it was a while ago. And so I'm walking through, and I'm just doing this with my eye, and I thought somebody had a gun pointed at me. My eyes kind of went funny, and I thought somebody had a gun pointed at me. So I went flat on the ground in the mall, face down, and screamed. And everybody just ignored me and walked the other way. Nobody said a word about, what are you doing? Why are you on the ground? What happened? Nobody cared. So I stood up and straightened my skirt and went right back to work.
That's hilarious.
But I'm sure there are many more embarrassing stories to come. But anyway, and then I moved to Arizona in 2015, and I haven't had any such incidents since. So I'm glad to be here.
Kate, what about you?
I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I'm one of the 3 people actually born and raised there. I have 4 brothers. Say that so easily. And I spent many years, wow, I just went off on a tangent in my head. I had many years in television. I worked on The Gong Show. That may be my most embarrassing thing. I can't think of anything I did when I was younger that would be embarrassing. I was so perfect. Oh, I know. This is really embarrassing. I was in Catholic school, and I was Kathy my whole life. And when I got into 1st grade, they had a sign on my desk that I didn't recognize. They said it was my name, but it wasn't. So I refused to sit there. It said Kathleen. And I said, that's not my name. Let's see, what else? Oh, well, I was scared to death of nuns. I still am, That's about it. That's all you need to know about me. Showbiz and nuns. That's my whole life.
Okay. Jen, let's talk about your new book that brought us here today, One for the Books. It's a wedding, but somebody shows up that they didn't expect. Is that correct? A dead body?
Well, yeah, this is one of those, like, you sometimes wonder where your ideas come from. I think I wanted to write a Christmas cozy mystery, because I hadn't written one, and I thought, I'll set it around the holidays, and, we all have those Christmas movies that we like, and totally honestly, I'm not a super huge fan of Elf, with Will Ferrell. That's it, right? It's called Elf.
Yeah.
I like it. It's not terrible, but it's not like in my top 5. But I will say that he sells the elf costume quite well, it's just funny all by itself, seeing this enormous man in an elf suit. So when I was thinking about writing a library lover's mystery set at Christmas time, I'd also been pushing the wedding of the 2 protagonists, so like 11 books now. So it was like, okay, let's have a Christmas book and a wedding. And then I thought, well, you need conflict and turmoil and death, it's a mystery, remember. So then I just had this idea that the person who was supposed to marry them is also kind of like the town party thrower. So he's like the rich guy who throws, the big party, and he just happens to be dressed as an elf at this year's party, but he's also the, local JP who's going to marry them. And then, like, the next day, they find him dead in his elf suit. So, yeah. So now they have nobody to marry them, and he's their friend, and he's, deceased.
And then there's also the extra guests who suddenly turn up at the wedding.
Oh, yeah, I forget. See, this is like, you write the book a year ago, you can't remember it. Oh, yeah! This is one of those, like, bridal nightmares where she thinks she's kept it a small wedding, and it turns out she gave the wrong list of people. She gave the like original list where you invite everybody before you pare down people you really like. And she gave that one to the stationer and who sent them out. So now like the entire town is coming to the wedding. So yeah, drama.
Kate, tell us about your new cozy, The Grim Reader.
Oh, I was just going to say that about Jen's book and the wedding invitations. I thought that was a great way to show Lindsay being in a town. She's been there for a few years, but she's not quite acclimated to everyone in town and that small town lifestyle. And everybody, it's like, you're not invited to the wedding, but oh, of course I'll be there. And it was such a great lesson for Lindsay. It's like, nobody's gonna stay away from this wedding. You're part of our town. So it was really great. I love that part. Anyway, the Grim Reader. Grim Reader is a bibliophile mystery. So it's Brooklyn and Derek, and they are up in Dharma for this one, which was where she was raised in the wine country. And they're having their first book festival, which she's been trying to get this to happen for years, of course, because she's a bookbinder, and her mother is in charge. And her mother, who's very seemingly kind of flaky, and she's spiritual, and by spiritual she's and she tries out every new thing, Wiccan and all this stuff. She's in charge, and she's kicking butt, and she's making it happen, and people start dying. They start the funds get stolen, and there's a really bad guy. And the thing about being up in Dharma for a book festival is that it's a wine country, so every other booth is one of the wineries. So it's wineries, it's books and book festival, and the book of the festival is Little Women. So everyone's reading Little Women, and the penultimate scene is Little Women, the musical. The town puts it on, and that's where everything, culminates. The big finish. That's it.
Paige, how about your book, Stolen Letter?
The Stolen Letter, published in April. It's a Scottish bookshop mystery. So in all of those mysteries, I try to weave through some sort of Scottish historical event or person. And in this one, it is Mary, Queen of Scots, and it begins with Delaney, the main character, running into someone who looks like her, but maybe 20 years older than Delaney. In other words, the woman, Mary, and Delaney look alike, but Mary also claims to be a reincarnation of Mary, Queen of Scots. So their lives become tied together, and then a murder occurs that is very similar to something that might have happened in the previous queen's life. And so Delaney is sent along a path of searching the historical activities as well as looking for evidence of the new murder.
All of your books have been labeled cozy mysteries, for lack of a better term. How would you define a cozy mystery, and what do you think are requirements for that type of mystery? Let's start again with Jenn.
I was hoping you were going to say Kate. She's better. You're better at this, Kate. I think she's below me. I don't know where she is for you guys.
She's the square above you.
Yeah.
Is she? Oh, she's okay. Cozy. You know, it's interesting because when I decided to write mysteries, I didn't know what cozy, like I'd never heard of cozies. I knew that you had Agatha Christie type thriller. I mean, not Agatha Christie type, you had Agatha Christie, very traditional, whodunit. And then you had thrillers, and then there's romantic suspense. And so I kind of know all that, but I didn't really get cozy. So they kept, you'd submit, I'd write an idea and submit it, and they'd be like, wow, we really need a hook. And I didn't know what a hook was. Well, I thought I had a hook. I did one that was a wedding photographer, and I'm like, that's awesome, because weddings and murder, because that'll bring out the worst in everybody. Not a hook. And then I had one that was Alfred Hitchcock's personal assistant. So, like, he wasn't in the book at all, but it was her, and it was old, LA and Hollywood, and totally fun. That one didn't fly either. But finally, they came to me with an idea, I think, to make me go away. And their idea was decoupage. So slowly I started to get the idea, and I knew decoupage was probably not going to be a hot ticket. So then cupcakes were kind of trending at the time, so I offered up cupcakes, and yes, that apparently is a hook. So that's pretty much how I figured it out. But I think most, Paige and Kate will have to answer too. I don't know if they knew either. Probably not, though, right?
No, I never knew. I had no idea, and I kept sending my books to a particular agent, and she said, you need a hook. And so I sent her another one that I thought, hey, here's a hook. And finally she said, don't send me anything else until you learn what a hook is. And I didn't. And I'd been writing for, a couple of years. She probably wasn't that cruel. That's in my head. It's like, get out of my face. So I found out what it was, and then I set about trying to find a hook that I would be comfortable writing a few books in, and that was bookbinding, and that was like, boom, it hit the ground running. But to me, a cozy, which I don't feel like mine is because it's set in San Francisco, but then there's Dharma, which is a small town, except that it's a wine country, so it's international, I screwed it up on every level, but it does have the elements of a setting is really important. It's an amateur sleuth, usually a female amateur sleuth. There's not a lot of blood and gore and guts on the page. I like to have a little blood, but not too much, because she faints at the sight of blood, which is why I like to put blood in my books. But there's lots of elements to a cozy, but that's all I can come up with right now. Paige, take it away.
Sure. I think they've summed it up well. The gory elements are off the page. Any sort of extreme elements, language, etc. Those are not really used as much in the cozies. The characters, I think, are so important. The community is so important in a cozy. When I was first writing or working on trying to get published, and my agent tried to sell something that didn't sell, and we were talking, and she said, well, I think that this idea will work with a cozy voice. And I said, oh, okay. And I had no idea what she was talking about. So I wrote a little note, and I wrote COSY or COZY with a question mark on a piece of paper. And then after the phone call, I ran to the local bookstore. I was in Salt Lake City, so unfortunately it couldn't be you guys. But I ran to the bookstore and I said, can you help me understand what a cozy mystery is? And she took me right to the section with Agatha Christie, with other mysteries and traditional mysteries. And at the time, Kate was just, I think, getting started and everything. And so I'm like, oh, I've been reading these forever. I just didn't know that they were a genre called cozy. But I think that as well, cozy definition is changing a little bit over time. I think that whatever a traditional mystery is, I think the cozy community is becoming one with kind of a traditional mystery, and I think they will always be relatively clean and not gory, but I think that the mystery is just as strong no matter what kind.
Want me to chime in about the British?
Mm-hmm.
I can hook around. Excuse me, this is Barbara, and you probably can't see me, but an interesting point is that the British call much darker mysteries cozies. For example, P.D. James is a cozy in Britain. And basically in Britain it means a traditional mystery. But in America, increasingly, and maybe it will change, it really means a not professional sleuth who has some sort of special skill that is not in law enforcement. And in some publishers insist it always has to be a woman. I have fought the good fight for the male cozy because I think it's perfectly possible. But for example, Miranda James is really a man, but he's writing, it's Dean James, but he's writing as Miranda because the cozy genre seems to demand that. But it'll be interesting to see it evolve, I think. It's a very complex question. A lot depends on what country you're in and what the book culture is, the way you answer it. But I have a question, which is, why are all of you writing about books as your hooks, so to speak? Because I think that's a really interesting point. We have a bibliophile mystery, we have a Scottish bookshop mystery from Paige, and we have a library lovers mystery from Jenn.
It's true. Kate, you published first. You should go first.
Well, I thought of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Totally. We just follow.
Yeah.
I don't know why we all write about books, but I'm happy that we do, and we're all pals. I started writing. Well, the bookbinder thing was because I'd always been making books, but not professionally. I used to take little book arts classes and, punch holes and pull string and write a little book. I didn't write the book. I made the book. That's where my expertise stopped back in the day. But when I was trying to think of a hook and thinking of something that I wanted to write about, books were my hook. I could sew. That would be interesting. To me, sorry, there are sewing mysteries that are wonderful, but books just clicked. It clicked for me. That was it.
Yeah. I think for me, I had started the Cupcake series. I saw your series was out. I think Dean came out before me too. Miranda James, who she mentioned before. I think she came out before me. Yeah, actually he did, because I met him when he was still in Texas at Murder by the Book, and so I did a signing there, and he came, and this is so me. I went right up to him and I'm like, yeah, well, my dog library mystery is going to kick your cat library mystery butt. And I was totally kidding. But Dean's such a gentleman. He kind of looked at me like, who are you, Yankee child? So anyway, it was hilarious. And now we're really, really good friends. So he forgave me for being, me. But back to the question, I think for me, I was looking for another hook, same thing, because I finally figured out what one was, and I'd been a part-time librarian for so long in so many different libraries, and I could see libraries were popular, books were popular between you and Dean Miranda, so I was just like, what else do I know? I know libraries, so there you go. What about you, Paige?
Mine was simply, what is the most perfect place in the world I can imagine? And it was a bookstore in Scotland right next to a bakery.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so easy, too.
All three of you have been writing series for a number of years. This is a two-part question. Did you know when you first wrote the book that it was going to be a series? And how do you keep readers engaged when you're like the 10th book or whatever number it is if they're not familiar with the first? How do you balance bringing in new readers with keeping your longtime fans happy with each book you write?
Let's make Paige go first.
All right, well, make Paige go first.
Okay, first part, yes, each one I've started I knew would be a series. However, I expected either only one or either only 2 or 3 books. I didn't really, the publishers don't buy books beyond 2 or 3 to begin a series, so I'm very grateful for anything that goes beyond that, but I did know it would be at least more than one. As far as balancing, I'm not sure. I try to, in each book, slip in a line or 2 here and there, giving enough background that will keep any new readers interested, and perhaps, hopefully, even going back to the first books. It's each book is a challenge to do that, and you don't want to get repetitive. I found myself looking back, okay, did I say this exact sentence about the bookshop to give a description to new readers in the previous book? So it's a challenge with each book, but sometimes a line or 2 can just propel it backwards and forwards enough.
Kate, you're up.
Kate.
Oh gosh. Can you repeat the question?
Did you know when you started your books that it was going to be a series from book 1? And how do you keep new readers pulled into the story without disappointing longtime fans with each book?
Okay. Wasn't sure about the second one. I knew it was going to be 3 books. I sold a 3-book deal. And I guess the way that I tried to make it different after 15 books, however that happened, is that I tried in the very beginning, I thought I had been doing this for so long that I'm going to put everything I've ever known in this book. So I put it in San Francisco where my brothers live. I also put it in the wine country where I have to go and do research. He's a bookbinder, which means she could go all over the world to a book auction or to Lyon in France, to the Bibliothèque and teach book arts class. She can, in one book there's a paper maker, a famous paper maker who is a rock star paper maker, and he has fans, and it's weird. So I tried to make it full of stuff that I could just keep writing as long as they would sell, you know. And the way I keep readers, I don't know how I keep readers. You give a sentence of, this is my mom and she does this, and this is where I grew up, and, you know, you just introduce the same old characters with a sentence, and then you just keep going, because somebody who's picking up my 14th book or something is going to know that, you know, there's not going to be a whole background here, but hopefully they'll enjoy the characters enough to go back and start at the beginning. Hopefully.
That's a really good question. I did the same thing. I wrote 3 books thinking it would be 3 and done. So when they came back about halfway through the 3 contracts and they said, hey, let's do more, it was like, I kind of wrapped up all the loose ends. So when people want to know, like, well, why did the couple get together and break up? Well, that's why. I didn't expect them to. I didn't think there was going to be more. So that's why it took 11 books to get them married. So that's a challenge, I think, as a writer, because you don't, like, as a reader, I always kind of write from a reader's perspective, in that I don't want to do to readers what I wouldn't want done to me, if that makes sense. So I need the characters to get married, and I need the loose ends tied up. So I'm always kind of like checking to see, are we going to keep going? Do I need to wrap things up? When I wrote the Hat Shop series, actually, I had the 5th book, Assault and Beret, came out, and it was a cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers. I was totally stoked. And then they're like, yeah, we're not buying anymore. And I was like, I'm like, okay, I need the book back, and I need to change the ending. So I got rid of the cliffhanger. But then, because publishing, I said I was bored, and I said, well, can I just write one more, because we ended in Paris, which I love Paris, but could we wrap up the series in London? And they were like, sure. So I thought, should have left that cliffhanger. But as for later books in the series, I don't care. I'm kind of the person, like, if I find a series at the 14th book, it is the single greatest day of my life, because I am a librarian and I must start with book 1. Mm-hmm. So I'm banking on anybody who was like, oh, you know, the cupcakes on that cover are so cute. Oh, it's book 10. Wow, I must buy all 10 and start at the beginning. So I don't care. Start at book 1 if you want to know everything. Totally kidding. It's just a joke. No, I put in little bits, but I don't belabor the origin stories of the characters, because I am the sort of person who will start with book 1, and I hope that most readers are that way as well.
A lot of readers don't realize that even if you're writing fiction, you're doing research for your books. So in the case of Paige, you were researching Mary Stuart. Kate, you're researching your book du jour, which happens to be Little Women. Jen, we're not sure what you're researching, but it must be something. So why don't you talk a little bit about your new book, the kinds of research you did, and anything fun you may have found. And we'll start with Paige.
Okay. Do you mean The Stolen Letter, or?
Yes, Stolen Letter.
Okay, so for The Stolen Letter, it was, of course, Mary, Queen of Scots, which she really was fascinating. What a woman. I mean, really, what a woman. And the challenges she faced, being basically imprisoned, even though it was in castles most of her life, and her ultimate beheading, which was, you know, more, in my opinion, a murder than an execution, as far as everything that went on back in the day. But it was, I actually just read a really thick book. It's usually around somewhere, and I'm drawing a blank on it, but I did note it in the acknowledgments, and I devoured it. I absolutely could not get enough of it. It was, you know, yay thick, and it was just fascinating. Lots of little minuscule facts that, of course, I didn't include in the book that I wrote. But boy, what a time! What an incredible time in history to be alive and to fight battles and to lose and win wars, and it was fabulous. I loved it.
Kate, what about your book?
Well, The Grim Reader, with the book festivals and with Louisa May Alcott, I did quite a lot of research on starting a book festival. It's lots of details, and it's very, you know, lots of organization and lots of different people on a committee needs, you know, they all need to contribute, somebody doing finances and promotion and, you know, banners for the street and the stores and things. And then Louisa May Alcott was kind of fascinating. I kept going off on these tangents and wondering what I could put in and what I couldn't. And I have a Louisa May Alcott scholar that shows up, and I loved what I did with her.
It was well done. Well done.
Yeah. And then just the weirdest kind of things. Like I had to research slingshots and how far they could shoot if it was, you know, just a little one, but they have these big ones. I mean, they're practically like a crossbow. So I had to research that, and that's a semi-spoiler, but never mind. But frankly, I just want to talk about my next book, which is Premeditated Murder with the Fixer-Uppers, because I had to do research on insane asylums. That's all.
That's a good one. That's a good one. When's that coming out, Kate? When would that be coming out?
Oh, it's coming out December 1st, but it's really cool. Insane asylums turning into a hotel. So anyway.
So Jen, your book was Weddings and Christmas. And a follow-up question, you said you had 5 favorite Christmas movies. Tell us about your research and what are your 5 favorite Christmas movies?
Oh, okay. My research was, for me, it's mostly the murder. I usually have to, you know, in this case, he was found on a beach, so it was, you know, which way is the body facing? What would be the signs of hypothermia? How does the body respond? Because it's December and it's New England and he's, you know, on the water. So a lot of my research is the murder aspect, which, you know, kind of grisly, but, you know, no blood on the page. It's the dead guy. But, so that's part of it. Part of it, too, is, you know, it's the little things. Like, he's a justice of the peace. So then I have to find out, well, how does one become a justice of the peace in Connecticut? Is it reasonable that this man who's a wealthy attorney would be a justice of the peace? And then, of course, there's a lady who is like a Wiccan or something. So it's like, well, what does she believe? What are some of the things that they, you know, they have, because they start auditioning people for the role of marrying them. So I trotted through a lot of interesting people, and, you know, so that was fun. So it is the weird little things that you're writing along, and then you're like, oh, I don't know how one becomes a justice of the peace in Connecticut. So then you have to go off into the Connecticut laws and regs. So that's my research. I mean, because the library, I worked in one for so long, most of that, although it's changing on me, I've been out of libraries for about 7 years. So it's interesting that the technology and systems have changed a little bit. So sometimes I have to call my buddies and be like, what's happening? And then for Christmas movies, It's a Wonderful Life. If we can count animated, it's always the Grinch. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And then the claymation ones, you know, the one with Heat Miser and Freeze Miser. Okay, that's like my whole childhood. My brother and I like waited all December for that one to come on. So, you know, because then we could act it out. So there's that one. And then, I'm trying to remember. Oh, this is terrible. Bad Santa.
God.
I know. I live in a frat house. That's just, you know, I'm sorry for all of you who think that's hilarious. And then Christmas Vacation is a favorite too. And I'm sure I'm missing a ton of the sentimental ones like White Christmas, Christmas in Connecticut. You know, so I love those too. Basically, I can watch Christmas movies all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in addition to your new book, Jen, One for the Books, you also had a book come out a few months ago. Tell us a little bit about Paris and why readers need to take a trip there.
Well, because we can't go anywhere because we're banned from the rest of the world. You should definitely read. Paris is always a good idea. Is set in Ireland, Paris, and Italy, as the heroine is retracing her gap year from 7 years before to try and find her happiness, because she realizes she's kind of become a workaholic and been trapped in her grief since she lost her mother to cancer. So she's been working as a corporate cancer fundraiser and doing very well, but life has just kind of gone on without her. So when her dad tells her that he's getting remarried, it's kind of a a kick in the pants to say, wait a minute, how can you go forward? And I've been stuck. So she decides to go look up Colin in Ireland, Jean-Claude in Italy, and Marcellino in, Jean-Claude in Paris and Marcellino in Italy, to see if any one of them can help her find her happiness. And there's an outlier that I'm not going to tell you about, but you have to read it to find out if she finds her happiness. And I will say that doing the research on that book was awesome.
You're all great readers, and it seems like now, especially, many of us are doing even more reading. Can you share a title or two, or however many you'd like, about what you've read recently that you would love to share with other readers? We're going to start with you this time, Jen.
Oh, okay. I have been, because I have one foot in women's fiction, romantic comedy, and then one in mystery, I read a lot of both. And actually, John is my hookup guy. He sends me all the good stuff. So, but then, it's been such a long summer. I was having a hard time locking in on my usual reads. So I randomly, see, this is where it's weird to be a reader, because you always have your antenna up. And I have a friend who's an author. She has written urban fantasy under the name Lee Evans. And she just randomly posted one day, where has this author been all my life? She's like, I'm just devouring her books. And then she put up the name Jodi Taylor, and it's the Chronicles of St. Mary. And it's this time-traveling, heavily researched history book. Jodi Taylor is British. It's set in a place called Rushford in England, and it really is about historians who travel through time to witness events. But the characters are so great and so hilarious, and you get so invested in them. And then I would advise not to get attached. But it's the Chronicles of St. Mary. Jodi Taylor's the author. I have blown through 4 of those books, even though I'm on deadline, and I shouldn't be reading anything. But that has really saved this whole pandemic summer from hell for me.
Paige?
The book I'm reading now first of all, I did read Paris, and I did read Kate's books, and both of them, the most recent releases, are fabulous, by the way. And I do have your new one, Jen. I have not had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm sure it's wonderful. And I honestly don't even know yet if they actually get married. I'm beginning to sense that maybe they do, but I'm excited. But the other book that I really enjoyed was The Nothing Man. Have you guys heard of The Nothing Man this summer at all? That was pretty creepy. It's a diary, kind of. A woman writes about her experience of not being killed by a serial killer while her whole family was. It was something. But anyway, I know. But the other thing, and I cannot remember the titles, and I apologize, but my husband and I went on a road trip just to get out of town, and we had to find something that works for both of us, and that usually is science fiction and space travel and something like that. So A.J. Riddle has written, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, a trilogy about space aliens invading and what happens, and we were sucked into those Audible books. I wish I could remember the title. Oh, Winter World is the first one, and A.J. Riddle is the writer. But those were Audible books for our summer road trip, and we really enjoyed those.
Kate?
Well, I'm just trying to think of all the books I've read lately that I love. One is Paige Shelton's Thin Ice, which isn't a cozy.
No.
But you need a blanket because it's freezing cold, and it's in Alaska.
You titled that one, Kate. You came up with the title, so thank you.
Thank you. I reread a lot of stuff because I guess it's just comfort reads and things. I love J.D. Robb, and I'm rereading her whole thing because she has a new book coming out in a week. And when I say I reread them, I listen to them at night I have all the books. I buy the Audible versions. I do that with a lot of that. With a lot of books, I'm kind of a nut. I don't know. I liked Abby Collette, who's also Abby Van Diver. She's doing the ice cream shop mysteries, and they're wonderful, and they have great titles. I'm kind of hooked on titles. I guess her next one is a Game of Cones or something.
Yeah.
And I like to read romance as well. I'm reading Susan Mallory, Susan Elizabeth Phillips. I like historical, C.S. Harris. I just been reading all kinds of stuff because I'm lonely and scared and just bury myself in a book. I guess we all do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do have some questions from your fans that Barbara.
We do have some questions. We have a few comments. Paige, your hair has drawn a number of comments. People like your new hair.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Shorter haircut. Right. A very good thing. Another question is, do you have to read, can you read these books and then go back and read earlier books? And I think we've already answered that yes, you can read either the Grim Reader or One for the Book or the Stolen Letter and then go back and find the earlier books. And another question is, are these only in hardcover? And yes, they are right now, but the earlier books will be in paperback. Then there are a lot of comments about how happy they are that all three of you together, because you're like their favorite authors as a trio. So that's a really good idea, right? The one real question is, does each of you have a favorite character that you write? And if so, who is it and why? So, Jen, this is your book launch, so we're going to stick you on the spot first. And I'm assuming that's across all your series, not just one book.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it just feels disloyal. Like, which is your favorite child? It's like, I hate them both most of the time. No, I'm kidding. I love my sons. I do. I love the hooligans. They're awesome. No, it's hard because you like a child, you know, your characters will give you fits. So you love them dearly. You've created them, but you know, they fight back sometimes. Sometimes they don't do what you want, or you know, they get all uppity. But for me, it's hard because I see facets of myself in a lot of my characters. Like in the Hat Shop series, Scarlet is like an uber extrovert, and if you've ever met me in person, I might be considered a tiny extrovert. My family, when I would go out to eat, and they're like, does the waiter have to be your best friend? Really? Well, yeah. But he gets better service, I'm just saying. But when I look at Lindsay, it's the librarian thing. It's the love of books. It's the thirst for information. That's a huge thing for me. And then the Cupcake series, the character Angie, actually the sidekick. I am occasionally known for having a bit of a sassy temper, so she is very relatable to me. So I see facets of myself, but then I also see facets of my friends in a lot of the books. Paige and Kate have contributed to a lot of characters. Little do they know. My family, you know, I'm a big plunderer. If you tell me a story, it's all material. So it's hard for me to say there's any one character. Usually my favorite is whichever book I just finished writing, because I'm just so happy to be done with it for the moment.
Which makes really good sense. Before we go on, one fan says to you that she'd love to have you send Lindsay to a library conference. And then she asks if the As Librarian is on virtual conference this year, so I'm guessing she's an Arizona librarian asking that question.
Probably. I would love to do that. In fact, Kate and I have kicked around an idea of having our characters meet up at a conference. We haven't done anything with it, but we've considered it. So,
Great.
Yeah, I definitely think that's on the table.
So, Kate, among your book's favorite character, do you have one, or is it you love them all the same, like your children?
I kind of love the one that I'm writing right now or at any time. I really like my guys. You know, I have Brooklyn Brooklyn is the protagonist in the Bibliophile Mysteries, but she's married to Derek. And Derek is just like, you know, James Bond. I mean, I love him. And he's really fun to write. He has a British accent, so of course he's very droll and loves her very much, so that's always appealing. And then in the Fixer Uppers, Shannon is wonderful. She's a small town girl, but she's, you know, she's talented and she's a building contractor, so she's working in a man's world. And her guy, Mac, is a world famous thriller writer. So I get these, the men are kind of larger than life, and I love writing them. He's got a great sense of humor. He likes Scooby-Doo cartoons. So I kind of like the guys, even though I love my girls. What can I say?
All right, Paige, you.
The two main characters that I'm working with now are Beth in Alaska, and she's been through some trauma, and Delaney in Scotland, who's from America, who moved to Scotland. And I tend to like the character who's cooperating more. And if they're not cooperating as I'm writing, I'm like, I'm going to go write Beth for a while, Delaney. You're making me a little crazy. So I like the one who's working with me the best.
All right. Jenn, is your Paris book a romance?
That's a good question. I mean, I think so. It's a romantic comedy. It's a weird, because I get complaints on both sides from, you know, I love you readers, I really do. Thanks for all the input. Because I'll have people say, oh, there's relations, you know, in the book towards the end, you know, whatever. That's awful. And then other people are like, there's not enough. They should be like, you know, from page one. And I'm just like, I would say, maybe. It's a romantic comedy. There is a love interest. But it's mostly, I think, about a woman figuring out how to like herself again. I think it's more a woman's journey with a lot of just funny, romantic, ridiculous things.
So, Kate, we already know that December will be your new book, your most, you know, a fixer-upper book. Paige, what is your next book? Will it be a Alaska book or a Scottish book?
It will be an Alaska book. December, I think Kate and I published on the same day. It's called Cold Wind, so it's the second in the Alaska series.
Well, I already see an event looming up here very early in December. So, Jenn, how about you?
I got nothing. I am so excited. This is the first time in 10 years I'm going to go 8 months with that. I won't have anything out again until next spring, like April or May. I don't even know what day it is. I don't care. On break. I'm on hiatus.
And it's a cupcake mystery, right?
Yeah, it's actually, I just finished writing it. It's called For Better or Worse. And yeah. And yeah, I think it's the first week in May, but I won't swear to it.
Alrighty. Well, I definitely think we'll reassemble then in December with Kate and Paige and Jenn if you want to drop in, and who knows. We'll make it a Christmas party. We're actually going to do a Jungle Red's Christmas cocktail party with the 7 authors. You are one, Jenn, who belong to that blog group. So maybe we'll just have a rolling Christmas cocktail party. Might be a really good idea. So, John, do you want to wind up?
We'd like to thank all of you for tuning in again to The Poison Pen, and thank our authors for joining us. Again, they'd be happy to have you buy books from us, as would we.